Now, you mentioned you scored a lot of runs at Brunswick, including 3 centuries in a row. You also won the batting average at Preston in the Millennium season with 38. So I reckon any average over 35 when you're playing at Preston's a super average. What sort of a batter were you? Were you a free hitter, or did you value your wicket and hang around, play for the match situation?
Yeah, predominantly that. I think more the latter. I wasn't a big hitter of the ball. I backed myself on playing pretty correct. Got taught by my father to play fairly correct, and was never a really strong hitter, but was able to. I think early days, I sort of, this is what happens with, as you get older, you get wiser, you get to understand what your strengths and your weaknesses are, I suppose. So you tend to just focus more on where you're going to score and how you're going to score runs. I was a pretty good runner between wickets, although I'm sure some of the guys that may watch this might dispute that on a few occasions. But I always backed myself to run pretty well between wickets. So yeah, I was more of a player that like to protect my wicket, make sure that and play for for whatever the position was in the game, and if that meant I was in early and had to try to rebuild a partnership, then that's what I'd do. And if later on, if I'd needed to get on with it, then what I'd probably do is put someone else in before me because I wasn't that good a hitter. But no, so that was the sort of player. So I used to value the time at the crease. I can remember my uncle saying to me many years ago, you get more practice in the center of the ground than you do in any practice net session. So when you get the chance to bat, you bat in the middle, and you use the time to improve. So
wise words indeed. Looking back at the premierships that you played in, what are some of the highlights of those that stick in your mind?
The first one's always the biggest highlight, because that's the one that was the first year I come across. And as I said earlier, I'd never played in a premiership side, and I think the last one I might have been a schoolboys game. So it was many years, and I just felt in that year, yes, there were some really good players, but as I said before, it was a team, a really strong team environment. The actual game itself, the premiership and then the championships, were really hard fought games, and I think through the year we had a number of games like that, and which we were fortunate. I mean, you've got to win those close games if you want to be playing at the end of the season when the finals kick off. You've got to win those close games, and I think our ability to defend, a 150, 160, 170 score was just in that first year was phenomenal, really, because all those finals were played under those sort of conditions. So that one was the one that sticks in my mind the most. I suppose the next big one was the one where later on, when Hobbs was back and we won the championship, where we just had a super team that again we could just do anything. We made 350 or 60 runs against Croydon last game of the year, and then the first year final we played against them, we made the same score, 360 odd again, and we just knew we just had a team that was so full of confidence and had the ability as a group of guys to just turn any circumstance around that got us the win. The others, there were some fantastic games there as well. The other two, and we just fell over at the championship. I think the second one, which was the second year, we ran into a pretty red hot Caulfield side who got about 280 or 290 against us in the championship, and we probably ended up making 230. We pulled up a bit short there, and then the other one later on, which we perhaps should have won, was Noble Park, where we had them, in a lot of trouble at the tea break, and then after tea, yours truly put a catch down at point off a guy that went on to make 50 or 60, and as it turned out, we got bowled out trying to chase down a score which was about 200, and they should have probably only got about 120. So that's cricket, though. That happens. But yeah, look, there's a lot of highlights in those finals. As I say, that I think the biggest highlight for me is just playing with a whole lot of blokes that, one, enjoyed each other's company, two were some nutcases amongst them, in a nice, kind, caring way, of course. But they were just damn good cricketers, and they just had the will to win. And the red and the white enjoyed the benefit of it, to be quite honest. So yeah, that's the main highlight for me. And the mateship you get out of it all, of course, the friends you get.
That's right. And I saw when you were back at the function early in the year, the friendship and the relationships that you have with those guys is just amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's why this 1860 club is so important for everyone, Lee. So it's just a great idea, and I think it's brilliant for everybody from different generations, and hopefully the future generations will all take it on board as well, because it's a great idea.
Yeah,
love it.
Yeah, I think we're all enjoying it because there's just so many stories, so many players, so many legends, so many characters. It's fantastic. When you retired from Preston, where did you go? Did you go back to Brunswick? Or
Yes, I did, Lee. Yes, I had. So I was about 43 when I'd finished at the Balwyn, and always wanted to go back and just finish off. Probably a bit of a pull because of the history of the family. Liam, a young bloke who was born, I think, when I was still he was born when I was still at Preston, and then he spent a few years running around with the Hobbit kids while we were playing cricket those later years at Preston. And so when we went back to Brunswick, I went back to Brunswick, and I thought I'll have 1, maybe 2 years just to finish off. I could sense that the body was starting to misbehave a bit, and even though the mind was willing, I went back, and they were struggling, so I thought, if we can go back, give them a couple of years, and hopefully we can bring a few people on. Gave me an opportunity to perhaps, introduce Liam into the Brunswick Cricket Club anyway. So there's that next generation of our family. 7 or 8 years later, I was still playing. So I gave it away. I think I was 51, I think, when I retired from, 51 when I stopped playing first 11. Writing was well and truly on the wall by then. And then I went and looked after the seconds the next year, and that's when I was fortunate to introduce and have a game with Liam. And so he would have been 13, similar to me, I suppose, 13, 14. I'd be younger, playing in the seconds. So I had that year, and then I just hung around for a bit to help another young guy out the next year, and then I pulled the pin on it. So, which was really, really hard. Really hard. I'm sure, as most guys have retired, I found it that year after I gave it away, it was just so hard. I couldn't go and watch cricket, to be quite honest. I was just, so anyway, but I'm all over that now. I'm all fine. So
yeah. 40 years is one hell of a career, but isn't it really, when you've played essentially non-stop through that period at a high level, sub-district Premier Cricket, sub-district predominantly in the one. So, I mean, that's phenomenal. Congratulations.
Yeah, no, thank you, Lee. Thank you. I loved it. I loved every minute of it. I wouldn't do anything different if I had my time again.
Yeah. Looking back at those 40 odd years, you would have seen the game change quite dramatically from, the early 80s. What were the things that you stick in your mind about significant change?
Well, I think the introduction of covers came in, which meant that we were able to play more cricket. Because it was always a bit of an through the 80s and even into the early 90s, October was always a washout. You didn't really start playing cricket, did you, until November? But covers were a really significant change to the game, which allowed us as cricketers to play. Training, I think the focus on training and certainly fitness was more prominent, I suppose, particularly as it got into the 90s. And I was, a big believer of that. I think, to stand out in the sun for 6 hours, or to bat for long periods, or to bowl for long periods, you need physical fitness, but you also need to be quite strong mentally. But physical fitness is an important part of it. So I think that became more evident. And I think even to this day, involved with Premier Cricket a little bit at the moment. It's the amount of work these guys do from fitness is amazing. I think, and then I suppose in recent times, I suppose just the equipment's certainly different now. The bats are very different. One thing that hasn't changed, the game's still the same. You still got to bowl and you still got to bat. You still got to, and the one who scores the most runs will win the game at the end of the day, generally. So
that's right. You got to bowl better and bat better.
That's it. So,
yeah.
So, but they're the main changes, I think.
Yeah, it's good to reflect back on that. You're involved at Essendon because one of your sons, Liam, has entrenched himself into Premier Ones.
Yes.
As a leggy and batter, and you're doing coaching. That must be a bit of a thrill for you. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, it's good. I actually got a few years ago, I got talked back into playing, and I actually went back and played a season and a half and looked after the fourths. So Liam, by that stage, was thirds and was making his way into the seconds. So I wasn't sort of doing a lot, and I was just sort of captaining and guiding, I suppose. Premier Cricket's an interesting setup because it's very young. It's very young, and there's a lot of guys that are 15 and 14, 15, 16 that are coming down and enduring this club environment of Premier Cricket, I suppose. So I've found it really, really exhilarating at times. I must admit, I found it really quite, after having a couple of years away from the game, and was just sort of started to get back into watching, and then I got asked to get involved, and I've always kept myself pretty fit, so didn't have to do a lot. My job was mainly just to ensure that these young guys were getting a go, and that we're getting some encouragement from a good self, and pushing them along to perhaps at some stage they achieve their goals and what they want to do. So I did that for a couple of years, and then the last couple of years I've just been involved more on the coaching side, and just with the panel of coaches. My focus is predominantly on, the younger guys, the guys playing one. Some of them are young, and yes, I'll get involved with some of them, but still I get more of a buzz out of the younger guys, and seeing them to become, as I say, to follow their dreams and their journey. I think the most important thing that, I think, and this, you got to be very careful, because kids at that age, they get a lot of people telling them a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
So, trying to keep it simple, and just to get them focused on being consistent, I think. So if you're a young bowler or a young batter, keep working hard and just become a consistent player. If you can go out every time you take the ball to bowl, or you got the bat in your hand, and can perform to the best of your ability, you'll have a good career, I think. You'll enjoy the game a lot better. So, yeah.
Wise words indeed. Just tracking away from cricket for the moment, you've been a very successful business person. Tell us about your life in business over the last 20 or 30 years.
Okay. I'm a textile man, Lee. So my background is textile and clothing. I started off as a young guy on a managerial scholarship with the Yakka Group, which was based up in Broadmeadows, and built my way up through predominantly on the technical side. So fibre, yarn, fabric, clothing, garment. To the point where I had about 17 years in the Yakka organisation, and then got seconded across by a guy that we used to compete with in a specialist market, and it's an emergency services market, so it's fire, police, ambulance, SES, and it's more in uniform and protective equipment. So the last 2 years have been very busy. Mm-hmm. COVID has kept us going. It's unbelievable how some organisations can progress while others have really struggled. So I'm fortunate that in this game where we haven't really missed a beat, to be quite honest. But over the years, came across and started a business up in Melbourne on behalf of the owner, and then progressively moved and started a branch up in Sydney and Brisbane, and we're now located in six states and territories, and we do police services, ambulance, fire. It's and that's what we do. We just look after those guys that we're charged to protect us, I suppose, as citizens. So I've been doing that now for many years. Still enjoy it. I'm transitioning a little bit, which is good. Just sort of working 4 days now, but hoping to get a bit more golf and that in, but that's not happening too much with COVID. But no, we're still working, still enjoy it, and we'll want to keep doing it for a few more years yet.
Steve, it's been just such an enjoyable conversation. Congratulations on your career, your success. You're a very impressive person, and I think the club's been very, very lucky to have been associated with you in that 8 years you were there. Wish you all the best, and we look forward to seeing you down at Kramer Street. Will do. And Lee, thank you very much. And as I said before, hats off to the guys that got this 1860 club going. It's a brilliant idea. I love it, and I think it's so important that anybody who's been through the doors at Kramer Street, should look at connecting themselves, because it's a great outing for us all. So again, thank you for your time as well. Appreciate it.